Hi everyone, today I wanted to show you one of my most favorite places in my backyard, and that's my garden. I'll show you what I'm growing and maybe harvest a few things together. I think a bug is biting my leg. I live in 6A growing zone. Sometimes it can be considered 5B. So we're high altitude and pretty dry here. The beds were all here when we moved to this home and the walking paths and all of that, but I'll show you some of the different things that we've changed and added. I hope you enjoy, and let's go take a look. So in this bed, I have a whole bunch of different things growing. I try to scatter and do a variety of vegetables within my beds just to bring in some of the beneficial insects and to help deter different bad insects that I don't want. My husband and I added a lot of irrigation to the beds as that was not originally here, but it's been working really great. We've done the drip tape, and I have emitters every 6 inches, and that seems to be a really good setup for our garden and our climate. We don't get a lot of rain here, so we definitely have to rely on watering our beds ourselves, and if that was up to me, that would not happen. And so I'm super grateful to have an automated drip system so that it just goes consistently. The plants are getting consistent water. In the front of the garden, it's the area that gets the most sun. So something unfortunate about the placement of this garden is that there's a really big pine tree on my left, and there's a really big pine tree or a couple pine trees on my right. And so as the sun is rising, the garden's getting shaded because of the pine tree, and then as it's setting, the garden's getting shade because of the pine tree. As much as we live in a really sunny state, and we really don't struggle with getting enough sun, I do with a particular placement of my garden. And that's been a learning curve for me as I have been planting in here over the last 3 or 4 seasons. And so I have to be really mindful of what goes in this front of the garden because this is where I get the most sun. And then I plant my vegetables that are more cold hardy and don't like a ton of sun out kind of on the back side of the garden, which I'll bring you along and show you that. So in this first garden right here, I have a bunch of herbs and celery up in the front, and this is where I've done my peppers this year. I do like to change where I've planted things. So last year this had a bunch of tomatoes, and we had green beans and different things like that. This year I have tomatoes in my 2 beds right over here. You'll see a bunch of dill that has come up from last year. I usually let a few heads of my dill go to seed, and I get a lot of dill in the spring. I've never had to start them from seed or anything. They just do it on their own, and I am all about that, and it's super easy. I have a jalapeno plant right here that definitely needs to have some peppers picked, so we're going to do some of that. I brought my basket here. Right in here, I did have some spinach that now it's too hot for it to grow and bolted. And so I planted some beets in here. I don't know if they're gonna do super great. They don't look wonderful. They're only about this big. And so we'll see what happens. Gardening in any case is a learning experience for anybody. And it's all about trial and error for me. And that's part of the joy that I find in it. It is disappointing when you put a lot of work into something and it doesn't grow that year and you have to wait a whole nother year to kind of try out again or revamp what you did do, and that can be hard and frustrating. I'm okay with that because I just know that that's part of the process and that's part of how I'm learning how to do this well. Let's have you come in a little bit closer. All right, so in this bed, you'll notice that I have these steel hoops, and I actually had put some frost cloth over this back in, I think it was early March here. And with the hot sun that we do get with the frost cloth, I was able to plant some cold hardy vegetables in here. So I had a bunch of lettuce all along here, and I would just put the frost cloth over it at night, and then during the day, if it was warm and not snowing, I would take it off and just let it get a whole bunch of sun. And it was really fun. That was the first time I did that, and I definitely am going to do that again. And I'll definitely use it, I think, in the fall. I think it's going to really extend my growing season for some of my cold hardy vegetables. So I might add some more hoops over to this bed right next to me and try to do a bunch of lettuce, because lettuce is something I can do really well. For some reason, I just have a lot of success with lettuce, and it's one of my favorites. So I love to do all different kinds of varieties. So I have a bunch of different varieties in here. My favorite is called Ezrilla, and I actually just harvested the last one of that, and I planted some in a bed over here, so we'll see if it comes up, but it's really yummy. I love this Merlot. I believe in my next bed, Tropicana is one of my favorite, and then I think this is Mirror, which is a really good one too. I have some beets right here and marigolds scattered throughout the beds. This was kind of a fun year because I let some of my marigolds sort of just go to seed last year, and I have about 5 different plants throughout the garden that just came up. So that's super fun. I've not had that happen before, so I might try to do that again and see what happens. In here, I have 6 tomato plants. One of my favorite parts about gardening is the tomato harvest. I love garden tomatoes. They are just my favorite. And I cannot wait till they are ripe and ready to be picked and ready to eat. So I do a lot of tomatoes, and I do a lot of varieties. I think that is so fun to have a big bowl of different colored tomatoes. So we're going to have a lot of different tomatoes and a lot of different colors this year, which I'm super excited about. But the tomatoes are doing great. They're not huge, but they have a lot of fruit on them. Okay, so in this middle bed, I have my dahlias here, and they're one of my favorite parts of my garden. When they come to bloom, they are just so beautiful. I love that it's in this center garden bed. They just add so much color and enjoyment to walking into the garden. I have a really sweet friend who does such a great job with his dahlias, and he gave me some tubers this year and actually last year. I failed to store them. I tried a new method and it didn't work, and they were all soggy. So he was super kind and generous to give me some more. And so I don't actually know what colors or what types I got. So it's always kind of a fun part when they start blooming and we get to see what colors we got. So these are the dahlias. Over here, I have a whole bunch of tomatoes as well. 8 tomato plants. That might seem like a lot, but it is so worth it. I have some green onions here, which actually surprisingly came back from last year because I did not harvest all of them. I left them to see what would happen. I think I've been harvesting them since probably, April, I think, and they just kind of keep coming, which is hilarious. So I am not mad about that. I will definitely take that. I have some marigold. I have some lettuce thrown in here. I also have some lilies that I just kind of leave every year, and they come back and add a really beautiful color to the garden. And I often see a bunch of butterflies on them, which is really fun. I have some cucumbers and I think a pumpkin plant on the other side, which I'm hoping kind of sprawl out. Okay, so this is just the other side of that front bed where I have my peppers and a whole bunch of dill. I have a whole bunch of dill back here. I have some garlic that I must not have picked all the bulbs because they have come up and they are just about ready to harvest. Actually, they're probably ready to harvest right now. I need to get those out of the ground. I have some zucchini plants. I have some green beans that I just planted here. I have a yellow squash over here. This is my rhubarb plant that it's like a love-hate relationship with. It gets so big and I feel like takes up so much of my garden space. I think I'm going to try and transplant it over to the back of the yard just because this is a lot of useful space and a lot of good sun, and I just kind of want it not in here to take up so much space. I have yarrow in here, which I really love. I think the flowers are beautiful, but also just for the medicinal uses of yarrow, it's a really great thing to have in your garden, a beneficial insect attractor as well. I have 2 more tomato plants. These are some of my favorite. It's called Rosella, and they are the yummiest cherry tomatoes I think you could ever have. They are like a cross between a black cherry, a purple cherry, a red cherry tomato, and they have the most wonderful taste I think you could have in a cherry tomato. I also have sunburst in here, which I have harvested just a few, and they've been really good too. So excited for those. What else? I have some bachelor buttons right here too that came up from last year. You're probably catching on to a theme. By the end of the season, I kind of let some things go to seed and see what happens and what comes up in the spring, and it's always a lot of fun. So let me show you the berry bed that is new. We kind of revamped this whole front space. I'll switch the camera over so that you can see. It used to be this random compost pile with these stones that we sort of repurposed and made a little patio over. And then there were 2 shrubs, and we took all of that out and put in another bed and then kind of a little gravel area to sit in. So I'll bring you over. Okay, so this is our little patio area. My husband and I love to come out here and sit and just enjoy the view of the garden, the kids playing in the backyard and enjoying all of the things that they enjoy in the backyard. We just added a pot with some flowers, and then this is our berry bed. On the far side, I have blackberries. In the middle, I have red raspberries. And then this year, I planted 3 golden raspberries. So we're going to see how those do. Something that I have loved is just watching the kids be a part of this. They love the garden and they love harvesting. They actually love eating what comes out of the garden. In fact, I feel like they eat more because they see the process and they have the hand in it as well. And that brings me as a mom so much joy. So I'm super grateful for that. I feel so blessed with the space that we have. Even when I'm battling the sun issues, I just never want to take for granted what we have here. I know that a lot of people wish that they have a garden like this, and so I just am super blessed and super grateful for this space, and I'm excited to have you be a part of it with me. You can also see a little bit of the chicken coop back here. We just built that about a couple months ago, and our chicks are about almost 4 months old, so they're not really chicks anymore. And they are not laying for us yet, but we're hoping in a couple months they will start. So I'll show you over there in a little bit. It is really cute and been a lot of fun for our family. So right here we have the grapevines. These have been a love-hate relationship of mine. They attract Japanese beetles like none other, and I have tried everything to try to get rid of them, and they just decimate, especially this side. This is a green grape variety, and I have yet to really get good grapes from this other than a few last year, but then the birds got to them really fast. I do see that I have more bunches of grapes on this side this year, so we'll see, but as I look at the top, I mean, the leaves are just getting decimated by Japanese beetles. So if you have any good tricks, let me know in the comments below, because I am ready to do anything. Sometimes I just want to cut this thing down. I really pruned this down this last year. It was like all over the top. It was like going up on these wires up here, wrapping around all of our lights in here, which I know I'm complaining right now, and it is a gift and it's a beautiful thing. But for what we get with it, it's just, I don't know if it's worth it. So it's to be determined. Okay, so here I'm standing on the other side of the grape arbor. These 2 sides are Concord grapes, and they have produced kind of every other year for me because they go so crazy and so wild. I prune them back so far, and then we don't get any grapes, and then the next year I kind of let them be, and then they get a lot of grapes. So I am no grape expert, so I am learning so much. Last fall we got a bunch of grapes from the Concord vines, and that was really fun. We did a lot of grape juice and then a lot of grape jelly, and it's definitely a benefit and something that I enjoy doing. However, the amount of attention that these vines take from the rest of the garden, I don't know if it's worth it. So again, to be determined. If you have any ideas, let me know. I'm all ears. Okay, so it says my camera is getting really hot, so I'm gonna try to finish this up. It is really hot outside. I'm definitely sweating, but this is the back side of the garden. I tend to do a lot of my lettuces in here and then my peas because they do really well with not so much of the intense heat. But here I have a different variety of lettuces. These are a little bit smaller varieties. I have some cucumbers, I have beets in this open spot right here. I have planted some more lettuce seeds, but it might be a little bit too hot for the seeds to germinate. I probably should have done that in seed blocks. down in the basement under my lights and then brought them out. So I might still do that because I still have time. I have all of my garlic here that I planted from the garlic I grew last year. We had so much garlic from last year. It lasted for so long and it was so fun. It was the first time I did it, and so definitely a thing that I'm going to do every year. And I never need to buy garlic because I just planted cloves that I had from last year and it's done great. When harvesting garlic, you're looking for the bottom 3 leaves to be brown, and we're just about there. We're like 2 leaves, some have 3. So I'll probably bring you along in another video and we'll harvest some garlic. On the other side of the garlic, I have more lettuce. And I have some zucchini plants, some yellow squash plants. I have my chard. I have my pumpkin pie plants that I'm hoping will kind of just go out over there. And another tomato plant. And then I did my snap peas, which they are definitely needing to be taken down. But just below them, I planted my pole beans, and they're about 8 inches high now. So as they get a little bit bigger, I'll start trellising them up. Here's just another view of that bed. So I have the tomato plant. This is actually, it came up from last year and I can't remember the name of it. I will put it on the screen. I use it almost like a celery. I just cut the leaves, put it in stir fries, soups. It's super yummy. So in this back bed, I have my shelling peas, and they've been really yummy and produce so much. They are terrible now because they're dying and it's too hot for them, and I need to pull them out. I just haven't done that yet, which is fine, part of gardening. In below them, I could do beans, but I just don't think it's going to get enough sun. This is my least sunny spot of my garden. I have my potatoes here. These are just Yukon Gold potatoes. I had a bag of the Yukon Gold get sprouts, and so I just decided to plant them. We did potatoes back here last year and they did really well. I put in some strawberries here and they did get a lot of fruit on them, and we harvested a little bit from them, but they're not looking so great right now. And I'm just wondering if it's because they're not getting enough sun. So we'll just have to kind of figure that out and maybe move them to another place. I don't want strawberries kind of going into everything else, so I might have to figure that one out and be a little bit more strategic about that. Let me show you the chickens real fast, and then I'll take you to one more area over on our patio that I did a little bit of an experiment with this year. It gets full sun all day long, and so I put some tomatoes and cucumbers in there, and they're thriving. So it just shows you what good sun does. All right, so this is our chicken coop that we just built. We had a lot of help from friends and our kids, and Chris and I spent many hours on this, but it was a lot of fun and a lot of work all at the same time. But we have our chickens in here and we let them out and go all over the yard. So this is just kind of the back side of the garden. You can see how the beds and the pathways are set up. Okay, so this is my experiment place this year. This is right on our back patio. It gets sun all day long. You can kind of see the garden over here. And this is doing really well. I have my San Marzano paste tomatoes right in here. I have about 5 of them. And then in between them, I have my cucumbers. And we've already harvested a couple cucumbers from here, which is way before some of the ones in the garden, and they're much bigger and have so many cucumbers on them and blossoms. So I just think that it shows me how much the sun matters and maybe the lack of sun that I get over there, but it is what it is. I can't cut some big pine trees down. That's just not possible. So I have to work with what I have, which is totally fine, totally manageable. I can do that. Anyway, I have different pickling cucumbers in here. One of our favorites is soya long. I think that's how you say it. They're long, skinny ones. Sometimes they curve or have like a hook on them, but they are so delicious just to eat fresh. I hope that we get a lot of tomatoes from these because I love canning our own salsa and different tomato sauces. So there's this, and then also right by my back door, I have a really large pot that was here when we moved, and it has a bunch of herbs. I do have herbs out in the garden just dispersed throughout the different plants, but this one's really nice because it's just all combined. We can walk right out the back door from the kitchen. It's a little bit easier for my husband to know which is which when it's just right here higher and super close than intermixed out in the garden. So let me show you that, and then that's the garden tour. This sage just keeps going crazy. I have cut it down to like this big probably 3 times already, and it grows faster and faster every time I cut it down. So I love sage, but I obviously have way too much of it. I've dried a bunch, but what I've been doing lately is just cutting it and putting it in some of my vases with some of my flowers throughout our garden and our yard, and that's been really fun and just adds a really beautiful touch to a floral vase. I have some dill, I have parsley, thyme, oregano, chives, basil. This had a bunch of cilantro right here, but that is all done now. It's just too hot for it. And these are just some onions from last year that came up. So that's the garden. I really loved bringing you along to one of my favorite places here in our backyard. It's a place that I spend a lot of time and enjoy every moment of it, other than sometimes the sweltering heat. It's a place that I am learning a lot, and I make a lot of mistakes, and I have a lot of successes, and that's just all of life, isn't it? There are ups and downs and everything. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.